personal injury attorney in Washington, D.C., and I am a business law attorney in California. And we only met for the first time, well, I can't even say in person, but via Zoom yesterday, but we've been following each other's social media accounts. And I think that it probably, behooves me to explain how this live came to be, because, I don't, most of the stuff that you guys see on my social media is usually related to business law, those types of issues. I sprinkle in my family and some cooking sometimes, but I don't really dabble into politics. I never have. I've just sort of been doing my thing, focusing on the family, focusing on my business, and not really paying attention to too much else. And so when George Floyd was murdered and it got so much media attention, it obviously was impossible, not to notice that it happened and not to really reflect on it. And then thereafter, when the protests took place in California, just like probably in many other states, we had a lot of looting. And so when the looting happened, I have some close friends and some clients that were affected by the looting. Their businesses got broken into, they got destroyed. And because the line of work that I'm in, obviously I'm a business attorney, I'm in a position to help some of these people to maybe, make claims to their insurances or make sense of their policies, or just really help them gather their bearings. I know how hard some of them have worked to sustain their businesses during the coronavirus pandemic and fighting for the PPP and trying to work it all out. And we were just about to, partially open. And then this happened. And without any disregard for what happened to George Floyd, I made a post on my Instagram page that talked about the fact that, my heart went out to these business owners and I wanted to do something to help them. And I volunteered my services for free. And, someone commented on that page and was offended because they felt like my post diminished what was really, going on in the world and in the Black community. And my initial reaction was I got very defensive, because I was like, well, why do these things have to be mutually exclusive? And, of course I feel bad for both. And then, when I took a step back and really thought about it and reflected on it, I pondered whether, the criticism of this person was justified. And, slowly through, doing a little bit of reading, although there's a lot of noise and a lot of conflicting information out there, and there's Black people disagreeing with Black people and Black people disagreeing with white people and white people disagreeing with white people, I came to the conclusion that I think I can now understand where this person was coming from. And then I decided, I've never been someone to sort of, follow the crowd just to follow the crowd. I like to form my own opinions, and I like for those opinions to be educated, right? And I realized actually through talking to you yesterday that, although of course, generally speaking, I know that, there's a prevalence of systematic racism, and, I've always been raised, and I raise my kids to teach them that it's bad. But I don't really know very much about, you said, I asked you yesterday, I said, well, you asked me a bunch of questions about the murder and how much I knew about police brutality against Black people. And I said to you, well, why are you asking me that? And you said, oh, because, some people say that, some white people say that they get it. And I just wanted to see if you got it, right? And when I started thinking about that question, the conclusion that I came to was that, some white people get it in theory, but I think it's impossible for us to really get it because we have never been in it. So I wanted to really talk to you to, educate myself, and by virtue of educating myself, educate other people on what it's like, to be a Black person, and what kinds of, discrimination and what kinds of struggles you guys have faced, I know we're going to focus mostly on George Floyd and police brutality, but like you and I discussed yesterday, I think we both feel that it's a more overarching issue. And
It is.
so, and so here we are. Sorry for sort of
Yeah.
the long rant, but so yeah, so that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, and and you wanted to have a conversation with me, right? Because you wanted to know my thoughts and feelings on certain things.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll say a little bit about myself. I
Yes,
am
please.
originally from North Carolina, and I've been in DC for about 20 years, a little over 20 years now. And I grew up seeing a lot of racism. So whenever you grow up, seeing it on an almost daily basis, well, first of all, I was born in a town that was not predominantly black, but probably about half and half black, Kinston, North Carolina. And we moved from that town to another town in North Carolina called Kernersville, which is very, very white. And that was when I was in about the 6th grade. So moving from one town to the next, it was like going from one extreme to the other, right? So I
Right,
went from a bunch of black people growing up with to a bunch of white people, and it
right,
was kind of like a culture shock. But you know what? I figured it out, and before too long, when I would see racism, I would point it out, and I wasn't the type of person to say if, but for example, one time I was playing, me and one of my black friends in Kernersville were playing with a white friend, right? It's just the three of us. And I don't know what he was thinking, but the N word came out of his mouth, right? It was, three of us. And we, you know, to be frank, we whooped his ass, right? We whooped his ass.
right,
And, but we were friends after that, right? All of us were still friends after that.
right,
He never said the word again, right? But it was like a learning moment for him because he had grown up, seeing things and not having exposure. I mean, we're probably like some of his first black friends,
right,
right? And I just feel like nowadays you have to engage in order to like really change the opinions of people. You have to get uncomfortable. You have to um, have conversations that are uncomfortable with people that you might not normally talk to.
right,
As attorneys, we know that, I always think about, what, this person might be um, that juror, that lone juror that doesn't want to convict this police officer of police brutality. But you know what? Maybe I can bring them, make them understand a little bit more about, where we're coming from. And, maybe they're changing their mind. And I can't tell you how many, white people that I've been friends with that have told me, you know what, like you've made me see things in a different way. So, and I'm not saying that's you in any regard, but I always like try to seek out people that are different, and I'll talk to Trump supporters. I'll get their reasoning, I'll get their rationale. I'll hear them out, and then I'll say mine. You know,
right,
at the end of the conversation, a lot of probably most times they're still Trump supporters, and I'm still believing in what I believe in. But we've had a discussion,
right,
and I think a lot of times, they end up seeing, things from the other side. So
right,
that's why I wanted to do this, and that's why I accepted your invitation, because it's like, you know what, this is something different. You
right,
know, you're obviously a white woman, and I don't know how many, what your circle looks like or network looks like in terms of black friends, but I figured, I could get up here and speak to some of your followers, and hopefully you could speak to some of mine as well, as to,
right,
just like you said, you really, don't get it. And I think a lot of white people feel like they do get it.
right.
They'll
Well,
say things.
they say they get it.
Yeah,
I
they
don't know
say
if
they
they
get it.
feel
They
like
say
they
they
get
get it.
it.
Yeah, but when the rubber hits the road, like they really don't get it. Like you really don't get it.
Right.
So that's why I was asking you those questions last night about, just to see if you really, really got it. But
Well, but
I
that's
think,
the thing. I think that
yeah,
you changed my opinion about it because I may have thought that I got it,
yeah,
right? And I get it in theory,
yeah, yeah,
but I don't think I can ever really get it or feel it the same way. I just
Yeah,
don't think that it's
no, you can't.
possible, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, you can't. You can't. It's just like a man can't feel, how a woman feels sexually harassed in the workplace. You know,
Right,
you can tell them about it, and you can talk about people sexually harassing you, and a man can say, you know what, I'm sorry, it shouldn't happen, but he can never step in your shoes and say, well, I know how you feel to be sexually harassed.
right,
So
right,
similar to that, yeah,
right. I agree.
yeah.
So, I know that you wanted to ask me some questions and I wanted to ask you some questions.
Yeah, so I figured that we could just start it out, discussing like certain things just about this whole about where we are now, and
Right,
you can give your point of view, I can give my point of view. I don't want everybody to know that's looking in that this isn't a debate. We're not going to be debating tonight. We're just talking about our opinions and our experiences.
right.
Um, if you want to debate, you got to go to CNN or watch. Yeah, we're definitely not going to be debating tonight. We do enough of that at our day jobs, right?
Right, right.
So yeah, so I guess we'll start with the first question, and that was like, and I'll answer this obviously once you're done. And do you think that African Americans are the subject of unfair treatment by the police? And if your answer is yes, when did you come to this realization? What event, and at what age did that happen for you?
Right. So, yes, my answer is yes, I do believe that. And like we talked about it yesterday, um, I don't know. I can't tell you that there was a moment in time where it somehow like dawned on me or I saw something or I heard of it somewhere. It's just something that I knew. It's
Mm.
just something that was always been known to me as a thing that exists.
Did you grow up in a neighborhood with many black people, or your
Not
school,
many. I
or your
mean, some predominantly white. I
your
live
school?
in
Same
the
thing with your
suburbs of
school.
California, basically.
Yeah,
So, there are some black people, but not, but, the community is still predominantly white.
yeah.
But, I had black friends in school and I went to like a public school in Los
Mm.
Angeles. I had, lots of black people in college. So, but it predominantly, grew up in predominantly a white community, but it's just, to me, it's just always been sort of a known.
Okay.
And I can't tell you, yeah, I can't tell you that there was a point in time where, I saw something and I was like, oh my God, this is happening. I just
Yeah,
kind of knew it.
yeah, yeah. Well, for me, there were certain very memorable experiences to make me think about. And then after I talked to you last night, I remembered another experience that I had that made me think like, okay, wow, there are some police officers that, may not like me for one reason or the other. So I remember one time, I think I was probably in about the 10th grade, and I was with one of my friends, two of my friends. One guy had his driver's license. I think obviously I was probably like 14 or 15 years old. So two of us were too young to drive, and we were with the older friend who was driving. He was probably about 16, 17. We were on a dark road in North Carolina, and it was at nighttime, and a cop pulled up behind us with his lights flashing. And the driver said, yo, you know what? I am not stopping on this dark road. I got to wait until we get to the gas station.
Right.
So he kept driving. He kept driving for probably a good 5 to 10 minutes. And
Mm-hmm.
we got to the gas station. He stopped. And all I remember was the officer screaming at the top of his lungs, get out the car, get out the car. I don't know if he had his gun drawn. I didn't turn around.
Right.
I know that the driver got out of the car. The officer approached him, looked at his driver's license. I just remember my heart beating really, really fast. And I think he got a warning or something. But that was jarring. It was a jarring experience.
Right.
And then probably after that, I saw the movie Boys in the Hood, and in that movie there was a scene with a police officer. Actually, it was a black police officer
Yeah.
in that movie, and he really put something on Cuba Gooding Jr. And then that happens a lot. A lot of people think that black people are, you know, all against white. I mean, there's black police officers that abuse their power as well. So I don't want to get the message convoluted. Like, we are just against police brutality, period.
Right.
I've seen several police officers and known people who have had disparate treatment by black police officers. And a lot of times, black police officers will abuse someone that's black because they know that they can get away with it, right?
Right. And maybe they want to disassociate somehow. I mean, I don't know that that's the case, but
Yeah, I think it's just a power thing, and then they know they can get away with it, and they know that if this person, you know, complains, nothing is likely going to happen to them.
right.
So that was the second. The third experience was Rodney King. All right, I was in high school when that happened, and I just remember like all these like riots in LA. And the thing that sticks out to me that's different about what's now is that when Rodney King happened, you know, all I saw was black people rioting. Like, you
Right.
know, I remember going over to my friend's house and his mom saying, they burned in LA, they burned in LA. You know, and she was, you know, someone who had lived in the 60s and, you know, when MLK died and saw all of those riots. And
Right.
so that stuck out to me. And then the last experience was when I was in college. I went to UNC Chapel Hill undergrad, and I'm in a fraternity. And I remember some of my fraternity brothers had gone somewhere, and it was on campus. And we use canes just as part of our, you know, get up canes. We twirl them and stuff like that. I don't know
Right.
if you know much about black fraternities, but anyway,
I
they got
don't.
stopped by they got surrounded by the police, and I think as they were like getting out, they were like pulling their canes out, like so they could get out the car.
Right.
And I think the police thought they were like pulling guns out,
Right.
so it got pretty heated. Needless to say, they were like on the ground, face down. And I remember they came back and told us about what happened, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me!" We're at a you know, excellent, one of the best universities, you know, in America,
Right.
and we're black, and this is happening to us at this school. I don't think it was ever reported to anyone. It was just like, and that's the thing, like things like this happen to black people, and like inconveniences, and it's just like we just go about our day. We're like, fuck, you know,
Right.
like that's fucked up.
It's
You
just
know what
a
I mean?
part. It's just a part. It's a part of your
It's just a
lives.
part. It's just a part of your life, you know, and it pisses you off, and you keep it moving, you know,
Right.
and that's what I was saying about George Floyd is like, you know, there's two things that happen with him, you know, and otherwise we wouldn't even know about it. The two things is that one, there was a camera, right,
Right.
and two, he died, right. If either of those things aren't present, right, we don't even know who George Floyd is. Like if he had died, like there would have been an investigation, there would have been you know, some news about it, but it wouldn't have been all these protests, right? It just
Right.
would have been another black man that died in the hands of the police that they had to do an investigation on, right?
Right.
So had he lived, he just would have been another black man that had gotten abused by the police with someone knee on their neck for 9 minutes. So you will have these police officers that have been arrested and are jailed right now. You will have them still doing the same thing that they were doing, right? And then you will have another black man walking the streets with PTSD from their experiences with the police.
Right. And you said something that really struck out at me when we spoke yesterday. You said to me, you know, when my son is older, I'm gonna have to sit him down and have a conversation with him about how to conduct himself, you know, with the police or just, you know, generally speaking, so he doesn't have to endure this abuse. And
Yeah.
I really, you know, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I don't have a son, I have two daughters, but
Mm-hmm.
I tried very hard to put myself in your shoes and think about having to have that conversation with my child.
Mm-hmm.
And it really
Mm-hmm.
broke my heart. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, my son is 4 years old. He's very oblivious to everything right now. But it's just like I already catch myself like, you know, turning the TV off when I'm watching the news, especially now.
Right.
Just all you see on TV now is protests and replays of the George Floyd incident. So, and I really want to shield that from him as long as I can, right?
Right.
I want him to be oblivious to racism, as long as I can keep it from him, I'm going to keep it from him.
Right.
So, but at some point, he's going to have to know, like, there are people in this world that may not like you because of the color of your skin, right? And I'm going to have to talk to him about, all types of people that may not like him because of the color of his skin. And one of those people are going to be police officers, right? Obviously, it's probably going to be about, 10 years from now where we actually have the talk about police officers and what you do if you get stopped or so
Right.
on and so forth. And I don't know exactly, how things are going to be then, in this
Right.
country. If I had to guess, I would say, they'll probably be better, but there still will be some significant issues. I mean, like I said, Rodney King happened 30 years ago, right?
Right.
And then within the past, 5 years, we've seen, a bunch of black men executed on video, on
Right.
TV. So I think it's still going to be here, right?
Right.
So when it happens, I don't know how I'm going to explain it. I think I'm more like a role play type person,
Right.
Whenever you prepare your client for a deposition, whenever I prepare my clients for depositions, I act like I'm the opposing attorney, right? So
Right.
I ask them
The
questions.
Socratic method, right?
Exactly. I ask them questions that the other attorney might ask them. So it'll probably be something like, we actually go through the role play of me pulling him over, you know, and him, me asking him for his license and registration, me asking him where he's going, asking him where he was coming from, asking him, what is he doing in this neighborhood at this time of night, asking him, what is he doing driving this type of car? I mean, who knows? He might have a nice car. I hope I can give him a nice car.
Right.
What is he doing driving? I'll probably do something like that with him at that time, just so he'll be ready
Right.
to respond to anything that comes his way.
Is this a conversation that your dad or mom or uncle or someone had with you when you were a teenager?
No, I learned the hard way.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned the hard way. But I was a type person where I've always been a big observer, right? So, if you got a room full of people, I'm probably one of the quietest people in the room, just because I'm just observing everyone and taking it all in and acting accordingly. So I've never been a person that would be, I've never been, and nobody would consider me a hothead, so to speak,
Right. Right.
or someone that easily loses their temper, right?
Right.
But my dad, on the other hand, he, experienced, some police brutality in my hometown when he was, a young man. You know what I mean?
Do you mind talking about that? I don't want to go there if you don't want to.
I mean, he doesn't talk about it much. I've only heard about it from, like my other family members, but
Mm-hmm.
I know that they hit him over the head with a baton or something and like busted his head open. He had to spend some time in the hospital.
Right.
So you never know, like, what, how somebody is going to respond. And I don't know how my son is going to be when he gets that age. I don't know if he's going to be someone that's quick to anger. I mean, if I had to guess right now, he might be the way he acts towards me,
Right.
but he might be, and I think he gets that from his mother in a sense, because she's definitely more of a hothead than I
Right.
am.
Right.
So, but I'm pretty laid back. So I never really had any type of situation where I felt like I was, luckily, going to be abused or beat up by the police. But just seeing what's happened to, other black men, black women too. I don't want to make it seem like, because, the Sandra Bland thing, I don't know if you saw that video. I mean, that was just a clear example of power tripping, and again with her, right? She died while she was in jail, and had she not died, right? Had Sandra Bland not died, we wouldn't know who Sandra Bland is. We would never seen the video, the body cam footage of the officer like yanking her out of the car, and you would have never seen that. So it's just like, you know, and the thing I want, I guess, your viewers to realize is that there's so many levels lower to somebody dying,
Right.
right? That we get affected by. I mean, we're hard. Everybody works hard, right? You got kids, you work hard, and a lot of times you're just looking to have a good time, right?
Right. Right. Of
It's the
course.
end of the week. Just imagine it's the end of the week, right? You've had a long work week. Um, babysitter got the kids. You know, you and
Right.
your husband go out,
Right.
and you're looking to have a good time, right? In a lot of situations, you know, a cop might mess up your whole entire fucking night. You
Right.
know, you might go somewhere or get pulled over, and I can't even tell you the number of house parties that I went to as a young adult that the police just interrupted because we were being too loud,
Right.
or or even like having cookouts, you know, outside, and the police come and say, well, you know, you're doing this or you're doing that. I mean, it's just like they a lot of times infringe on black people just having fun, right? And
Right.
nobody dies there, right? Nobody dies, and you don't hear about it, and they don't get in trouble because it's just like, what are you gonna do? Go to the police station and say,
They broke up my
um,
party. Right.
yeah, he messed up my party. All right, he's not getting in trouble for that,
Right.
you know. He's
Right.
not getting in trouble for that. And
Right.
a lot of times, and for example, with the chokehold in Minnesota, and I'm glad that they outlawed that recently. But a lot of times, like black people are the only ones that officers stick to the law with, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in Minnesota, you were allowed to use it. You were allowed, you know, before this happened, you were allowed to use a chokehold on someone to restrain them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't know the statistics, but I will venture to say that that hold wasn't used on a lot of white people, but instead used on a lot of black people. In
Right.
that same vein, a lot of times, you know, if there's like a noise ordinance and you can't like have a certain amount of noise in a neighborhood,
Right.
like officers, and I don't know if you want to call them officers or neighborhood cops or whatever, they will hold that law. They will hold that law so stringent on black people, whereas with white people are doing it, you know, it it goes unnoticed or goes overlooked.
Right. Right.
Um, you know, it's you know
So let's talk about the why a little bit. You
the
know,
why.
why,
Okay.
why, why, why are they doing this? Why are they singling out black people and discriminating against them and killing them and abusing them? Why is this happening?
Well, you have to look at the origin how the police force originated, right? So when the police were initially created, black people were they were created when black people were freed from slavery, right? So they were used to basically keep black people in check,
Right.
right? You see the videos of not even whenever they were able to start videoing and documenting things, right? Just remember your earliest memories of seeing the police interaction with black people. You see dogs, right? You see water hoses. You see um, pandemonium, right?
Right.
Okay, so there's never been a great relationship with black people, period, right? Okay, so you have to pretty much undo the system and do it all over
So do you think
because
that it's just a, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted
yeah,
to follow up with a question. So
yeah,
do you think that it's basically just a culture that carried itself from the inception of the police force and just got passed on from, generation to generation and from year to year?
yeah. I think in a lot of ways it did, and only in places where they've taken affirmative steps to change the culture has it actually changed, but change and address, you know, that you know how they started and what they're doing, has it actually changed? Those places where it was never really addressed and they've just let it continue, yeah, and that's where we are today. It's like, you know, they haven't a lot of these police departments haven't had their quote unquote come to Jesus moment where they say, okay, you know, this is how we treat black people, This is, and it has to change. Not only that, but a lot of these police unions, they fight. They fight, having psychological testing for these officers.
Right.
They fight um, more diversity training for these officers. They fight anything that you want to do to make them better police officers, right?
Right.
And whenever you're up against that, it's like you're setting your officers up. You're pretty much setting your officers up for failure if you're
Right.
not giving them the proper training that it takes whenever that culture is embedded. And then you have all of these people talking about the bad apples, one bad apple, a few bad apples here and there. But if you look at the George Floyd video, it was okay. The guy that, well, first of all, they all had their knee on his back, right? But the really bad apple was the guy with his knee on his neck, right, for 9 minutes,
Right.
right? So and you had three other officers that didn't do anything about it, right? He was sitting there with his knee on his neck for 9 minutes, and they didn't do anything about it. And that's what you have in a lot of police departments across the nation. You have these few actors within the departments, right, that are abusing people at will, and then you have the rest of them that are turning a blind eye to it. So
Right.
that makes the whole department bad apples, in my estimation. You know, you can't just call that one actor a bad apple when everybody else knows what he's doing and isn't saying anything, right?
Right.
So yeah, you have entire police departments that need to be overhauled, retrained, fired and rehired, if you ask me.
Right.
Um, yeah. So
Right. So are there states, cities, counties where they have done that and it's worked?
yeah, I was talking to my uncle last night actually, and he was talking about in Atlantic City how they have psychological testing for officers before they get hired.
We were talking about that yesterday, just you and
Yeah,
I.
yeah, and they have psychological testing for officers while they are working, and just a number of things that they do to make sure their officers are okay and not a threat to the community.
Right.
But you don't see these departments say, okay, well, look, you know what, we're having a lot of issues with policing black people. Maybe we should look at this department and see what they're doing and implement some of these policies into ours.
Right.
They just stick with what they're doing because they know that an officer probably isn't going to get convicted,
Right.
right? And they just keep it moving. And I'm glad that people are protesting now. I'm glad that we have people protesting that are all different races, all different colors, because I think there will be, some changes made after this.
Right.
I think we'll probably just end up scratching the surface, but you
Right.
know, we're moving forward. I can't be,
So why do you think it's on such a grand scale now? I mean, obviously this is a pattern that's been happening time and time again over the last several years. What do you
well,
think?
it's been on a grand scale. Just now you're seeing it on video.
Well, no, no, no. I'm talking about the protests. I'm saying
Oh,
what, like
oh.
this has never, I don't think in the history has
Well, I
happened on
thought,
the
yeah,
scale.
I thought about that too, and I will say that the video of George Floyd was probably the most egregious that I've seen.
Right.
And other videos you've seen officers, shoot another person. I mean, I don't know. It's the guy Walter Scott in South Carolina. A guy was running, and officer pulled out his gun and shot him in the back. I mean, that was pretty egregious.
Right.
But I mean, the fact that you have your knee on someone's neck, right, and they're telling you they can't breathe, right, and you keep your knee on their neck even when they're passed out
Right.
for 2.5 minutes.
Right.
I think that's pretty. I think that was pretty jarring for everyone to see, and it struck a nerve. I
Right.
think with everyone. I hate that people couldn't see or have this response when the other killings happened,
Right.
like when Trayvon Martin's killer was acquitted of murder,
Right.
George Zimmerman, um, Tamir Rice's the officer that shot Tamir Rice didn't get any jail time. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, I can sit here all day and tell you about officers that didn't get convicted for for their egregious acts.
Right. Do you
But
think, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead, sorry.
yeah, no, I was just saying that I think the video was pretty tough,
Right.
and I just think that just the whole knee on his neck for 9 minutes. I mean that's just like strangling somebody, right?
Right. So you're just saying that it was so egregious that people just could not, they had to do something about it.
Yeah, I think with a lot of, well, first of all, black people have been enraged forever, right? We've been enraged like,
Well, that's why I'm saying, what do
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
think fueled
So
this on
so
this
yeah,
such a massive
yeah.
scale now?
So what? Why are white people upset now, right? Why are they upset? Um, I just think that it was a tough video to watch, and I think, the more you hear it, okay, Black Lives Matter. Probably with white people, they just heard it, and it went in one ear and out the other,
Right.
because Black Lives Matter was started, when Trayvon Martin was killed,
Yes, I was
and
reading
that's
about that yesterday.
yeah, that's when the whole movement started. And I think, when they heard it, it went in one ear and out the other, and then they come back with their other saying all lives matter, to combat, the Black Lives Matter. All lives do matter, but all lives aren't threatened like black lives. So that's what
So,
we're
can
focusing.
I just pause you for a moment and have you
Yeah,
talk about that? Because, I myself have used that phrase, all lives matter, and,
yeah,
initially thought, well, of course they do. Why shouldn't they? We should all just get along and we should all just, be good to each other and we should all be happy.
yeah,
And then as I started talking to sort of more people and reading a little bit more, it dawned on me that, um, almost by saying that, it diminishes, the BLM movement because, white people aren't going around saying, white lives matter,
yeah.
or, Asian
Well,
people
look,
aren't saying Asian lives matter,
yeah,
right? So why are we even bringing all the other lives into the picture? So can
yeah,
you just talk? I think people are confused by the concept. And I
yeah,
think that white people that say all lives matter and then black people get offended at them, I just think that on some level, maybe they just don't understand.
yeah. So first of all lives matter would not even be a saying, right? Nobody would be saying all lives matter if somebody didn't create Black Lives Matter.
Right,
Right? Nobody was saying all lives matter before Black Lives Matter came to fruition.
right,
Right? Okay, so why weren't you saying all lives matter before Black Lives? So that goes to show you that it's not something that you really want to believe in or say. You're just saying that to um, rebut Black Lives Matter,
right,
right? So it's kind of like someone saying, you know, I'm fighting for breast cancer awareness, and then somebody saying all cancer matters, all cancer you should be aware of,
right,
you know.
which diminishes the value of your fight for what you're
Exactly.
fighting for. I understand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we obviously think and know that all lives matter, right? But why are you talking about all lives matter when I'm talking about Black Lives Matter? Like, why
Right,
weren't you saying that before? Like, why are
right,
you using that to rebut what I'm saying? You
right,
know, it's like you're arguing with me. It's like
right.
you're creating an argument. When I say Black Lives Matter and you say all lives matter, you're creating you're trying to argue with me now. You
Right.
know, yeah. So
No, I hear.
that's why we take offense to that.
No, I understand. I think that
Yeah,
it makes sense to me now because,
yeah,
originally I was like, well, what's wrong with that? Why can't we, we should just all get along. And of course, all
yeah,
life should matter. Why
yeah,
should any one life be more or less important than the other?
yeah.
But, I think that in the context of things,
Yeah,
I,
someone said something about Blue Lives Matter. Same thing with Blue Lives Matter. That's right. Blue Lives Matter never was a saying before someone said Black Lives Matter. You know,
right.
so it helps to it only acts to diminish the Black Lives Matter movement. How do you raise your kids? How do you said you have two daughters, right? How old are your
Right.
daughters?
9 and 6.
Okay, and do your kids have many Black friends?
They have some. I can't
Mm-hmm.
say that they have many. They go to a charter public school by our house.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's some black kids, but it's not it's predominantly white.
Hmm. And
Um,
your 9-year-old is probably pretty aware of what's going on now with the protest. Your
she is
6-year-old probably
aware.
as well. Yeah.
The 6-year-old is, but you
Yeah.
know, she's 6. The
Yeah.
9-year-old is, and not only is she just aware, we are making her aware.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
So,
what do you tell her?
well, so let's go back to your original question in terms
Yeah.
of how I have been raising my kids. And, you know, I've always thought that, you know, that was the right way, but now I question it,
Yeah.
right? So, again, it's really just the same way as I was raised.
Yeah.
You know, my parents have always taught my brother and I to be all inclusive. I mean, I suppose it behooves me to point out that I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
And even though I have never encountered any kind of, you know, religious discrimination, I know that my parents have and my grandparents have, and I've heard many stories about it. So I think that given that I've always been raised to, you know, we never discussed, you know, oh, you should, you know, treat everybody equally in terms of like black people or I don't know, Asian people or someone. It just always was this overarching mantra of, you know, you don't judge people by their, you know, race, religion, color,
Hmm.
whatever, even like their physical attributes, right? Like you look
Hmm.
at their character, you judge them through, you know, their kindness, their loyalty, their intelligence, and that's how I've been raising my kids,
Hmm.
right? But
Do you,
yeah,
do you raise your kids, um, if you see something, say something?
yes, absolutely.
And what is that in regard to?
Well, how do you mean? I mean, we haven't really had like a situation where, you know,
Yeah.
something happened and it was like a teaching experience yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for example, we talk about bullying a lot,
Yeah.
right? I know that it's a little bit off topic,
Yeah.
but you know, my 9-year-old, she's in 3rd grade, so you know, we say to her that, you know, we talk about bullying, you know, her being a bully, why it's wrong, but we also talk about, you know, if you're seeing someone being bullied, you stand up for them,
Yeah. So you should
right?
teach them just like you're teaching them about bullying. You should teach them the same thing about racism.
Well, that's what I was actually going to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
that, you know, I think that I'm rethinking maybe my approach a little bit, and luckily they are still young enough for me to be able to ingrain these values in their minds.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I agree with you. That's what I think. But you know, I suppose if someone were being teased or mistreated for their skin color at school, for example,
Hmm.
yes, sure, that's racism, but it's also bullying,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So, you know, sometimes, at least at the point in their lives where they're at now, it's a little bit of one and the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Someone asked, do you see color or not?
I'm gonna have to ask you to explain to me what that question means.
Um, well, all right. When you see um, a black man walking down the street in your neighborhood, as opposed to a white man walking down the street in your neighborhood, um, do you have any type of reaction, or, internal reaction when you see one or the other?
No, it depends on, you
The
know,
time of
whether
day
it
and
makes no difference to me whether they're black or white. I
okay,
will look at whether they look disgruntled
okay,
or, you know, whether they're behaving in a really strange way. But if they look like they're well put together and they're just going about their business, it makes zero difference to me whether they're black or white.
okay, okay.
So I suppose the question is no, right? I mean, the answer is no.
The answer is yes. You see color, but color doesn't affect you one way or the other when you see it.
Okay,
It doesn't
fair.
make you feel one way or the other when you see
Right.
it.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see what else someone asked.
What if they aren't well put together? It doesn't matter if they're white and, well, how do you mean not well put together? I mean, I don't care if they're not wearing a suit. It's
Yeah,
to me, it would be sort of like the common things that you would look for that would scream, you know, danger to you, right? But it wouldn't matter to me whether they're white or black. I would,
Yeah.
it'd be the same stuff.
So
It'd be
what
the
would
same
scream
things.
what would scream danger to you?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. We have a very serious homeless problem in Los Angeles as of late, and
Uh-huh.
especially in the neighborhood where I live and work.
Uh-huh.
And probably them acting erratic. I mean, talking to themselves, maybe not having any shoes on. It
Hmm.
would be like these
Yeah.
things because I wouldn't think that, okay, well, maybe this person is either on drugs or they're mentally impaired.
Yeah.
But, them being white or black would make no difference to
Okay.
me in whether I feel fear.
Got you. Got you.
Labeling is part of the problem that results in racial profiling. Well, with regards to what?
I guess she's saying well put together.
Well, I just mean that, listen, you probably, if you saw someone on the street, I mean, look like you're in good shape,
Hmm.
right? But if you saw someone on the street and they were doing weird stuff and talking to themselves, wouldn't you
Hmm.
walk the other way? I mean, I wouldn't try to have an altercation with that person,
Yeah.
regardless of the
Yeah.
color of
I
their
guess
skin,
I guess
you
I
know?
guess well put together is like,
Well, maybe I misspoke. I didn't mean that
yeah,
they have to be wearing a suit, but,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
meant that, like, these are kind of the signs that I would look for.
If they're acting, not normal,
Or if they
acting
look like they're
erratic.
really dirty, like they just like rolled in mud and they're like all their clothes is ripped up, then I would think that maybe something would tell me, okay, maybe this person is homeless. I have no idea if, what's going to happen. But again, the color of their skin, nah, it makes no difference to me.
Okay. Someone said, "Do you believe in the concept of implicit bias?"
I do.
Jen? And what do you think that entails?
Well, I think that all people are implicitly biased because, we are raised in a society that attributes certain qualities to people of different, races, religions, skin color. I think that, we can work towards eliminating that, and I think that we should, but I definitely think that it exists in both positive and negative ways.
Do you know what privilege is? And do you think you have privilege?
You know, I reflected on that also.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people really don't like the word privilege, just
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking, or maybe white people,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that it makes people feel like it, diminishes the hard work that they might have put into
Mm-hmm.
something or to get to whatever point in their lives that they're at,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that you can ask someone if they feel privileged in a vacuum, right? Because privilege is relative.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll give you an example, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
ask me if I feel privileged as compared to, someone who, was born into a really wealthy family
Mm-hmm.
and just got everything handed to them and didn't have to like study really hard and work
Mm-hmm.
really hard to get to where, I'm a product of an immigrant family.
Mm-hmm.
We moved here. I was a teenager. My parents had, no idea about like school or SATs or college, nothing. I had to figure all of it out on my own, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you ask me about privilege as it relates to someone who just had everything handed to them, then
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't feel privileged, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
you ask me if I am privileged as compared to a black person that
Mm-hmm.
had to work just as hard to get to where I'm at, then yes, I do feel privileged.
Or even harder to get to the same
Well,
place.
but that was going to be my next point is that,
Yeah.
I took all the steps that I took, but that person had to probably work three times as hard and also endure, discrimination. Maybe they were passed up for a promotion or a job or
Mm-hmm.
something else based on their skin color. So, in that respect, I do feel privileged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you the same question
Privilege.
about privilege
Yeah.
and what you think
So
about
so
that.
yeah, and I'm glad you did because I can explain privilege to you very easily, right? So there's obviously some neighborhoods you wouldn't feel comfortable going in, right?
Right,
Some neighborhoods in LA, Crenshaw, so on and so forth.
right.
You probably wouldn't feel the most comfortable going in, right?
Probably not.
Me, because I'm black, right? I can probably go into that same neighborhood and not have any fear, right?
Right.
I can go into that same neighborhood and not have people look at me funny. I can go into that same neighborhood and be welcome with open arms,
Right.
depending on how I'm dressed. Obviously, there's some neighborhoods that I go into and people will probably look at me like, who is this cat? But it's never going to be to the extent that they would look at me like they would look at you,
Right.
or a white man,
Right.
right? So I'm privileged, right?
Right.
I'm privileged going into that neighborhood. I'm going to get certain benefits going into that neighborhood for the simple fact of the color of my skin
Right.
and how I look, right?
Right.
Um, so that's how privilege is, except reverse for white people.
Right.
Um, they have that privilege in every other environment. So just imagine every environment that you go into, your office, the
Right.
courthouse, the grocery store, your kids' soccer games, your church. Well, I won't want to say the church because that's normally people of the same
Right.
backgrounds. But just imagine that with everywhere you go,
Right.
right? Just imagine everywhere you're going, right, is basically Crenshaw
Right.
or a bad neighborhood that you wouldn't feel comfortable going, or
Right.
that people don't necessarily give you the benefit of doubt,
Right.
right? And a lot of times that's how Black people feel,
No, I
right?
understand. I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. So, if anyone is wondering how, you know, how to explain privilege, how to define it,
No, I think you just explained it perfectly. I think
yeah,
a lot of people misconstrue it and they feel like it's a personal attack on their, hard work,
yeah,
right? But that's not what it is.
it's not, it's not.
I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
you have certain benefits that are totally unrelated to your hard work.
Right. I hear
Yeah.
you. I understand.
We talk about Amy Cooper and the Amy Cooper incident. You saw that, obviously, what happened in New York.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's not much to say about that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I wrote to you how I felt. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I don't know that I should, specifically say it. I think that she is, sort of the epitome of the problem in everyday life, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
What do you think?
she weaponized her her privilege. She
Right.
weapon Yeah, she weaponized it as a white woman.
Right. Well, I agree with you. I don't
Uh-huh.
disagree with you, but when I see things like that, it makes me think, you know, did she actually believe that there was even an ounce of danger to her?
No, she didn't believe that.
Or was it just completely made up
Did you
and conjured
like
up and,
first of all he told her to back up, right? When she approached him, he
right,
told her it's not like he was approaching her,
right,
right? He was standing there. She approached him and he said, "Back up.
right,
Get away from me." And
right,
that's when she called the police and said that it was a black man approaching her, and then she changed the inflection in her voice as if she was being attacked.
right, right.
Yeah, so I don't think that. I mean, yeah, definitely. I don't
Well,
think
but
she ever thought that.
not to excuse what she did by any means. I just always, like, when I see people, I just, what it is. I can't. I can't fathom that there are people out there that are just so. I don't even know what word to use. Angry is not the right word. It's just disgusting,
Yeah,
right? So in my mind, to sort of think, okay, well, maybe there is some benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's just, I don't know, mentally ill, and she somehow just imagined that maybe
and
she
that's
was,
what
you
and
know what I
that's what
mean?
and that's what the police officer would have thought had they arrived on the scene if he didn't um, record it. Right,
Right,
the police
right,
officer would have arrived on the scene, and you don't know what would have happened.
right,
Um, it would have been another black man's day ruined um, for some bullshit.
right.
You know?
So let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about police brutality and sort of, how that came to be. Um, but what about just like people like her? I mean,
Yeah,
she's obviously, entitled and racist and all these other things. There are other people out there like her, and, obviously they create. I mean, part of the protest, I think, is not just police brutality, although everything is centered around that, and
yeah,
that was sort of the fuel that fueled the fire. But I think it's so much more than that. It's stuff like that that happens every day that never makes it on camera, right?
yeah,
A, why do you think that that is going on? And B, what do you think can be done to at least move towards, making people, I don't know, open-minded is probably not the right word. It's just not, no one, in my opinion, should be judged,
yeah.
by the color of their skin.
What will you take from this conversation? What will you take from it?
I think that it reaffirmed a lot of the stuff that I've been thinking about, that's been on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, it's not that I have been looking at the whole situation wrong, it's that
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that this has opened my eyes to a lot of things, and hopefully, some of my followers who have been listening. And I think that, having these conversations are so, so, so important. And I
yeah,
think that, we just need to be, you know, people have, I think, a fundamental problem with the fact that they can't distinguish between, you know, understanding something and agreeing with it, right?
mm-hmm.
So, like the looting, for example, right? A lot of people are upset about the looting. I'm also upset about the looting, right? I
Yeah,
don't agree with the looting,
yeah,
but and again, in California, most of the looting was not done by the members of the BLM movement. We have, you know,
mm-hmm.
white supremacists and opportunists and all kinds of stuff. But even
Mm-hmm.
if some of it was done by the people from the, Black community, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't agree with it, but
Mm-hmm.
I could understand
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because, at this point in time, they're so enraged that they feel that that's the only way that they can be heard.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So, my takeaway is to, to think about it more and to
Yeah,
educate myself more and to pay attention to it more and to educate, you know, my friends that are not looking at it and are
yeah.
not educating themselves. So
Cool.
that would be my
Cool.
takeaway.
Well, we would be appreciative of that.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of your followers. And thank you for being so gentle with me. I told you I was nervous.
Yeah,
Really, I wanted to be genuine, but I also didn't want to offend anyone.
yeah, yeah,
But I think that this was a really great discussion,
yeah,
and I thank you. I look forward to there being a lot of positive change. I
yeah,
don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I think if people unite their forces,
yeah.
it will happen.
Yeah, definitely not gonna happen overnight, but we still gotta, keep our eyes on that goal and just fight for it until it, you know, until we can't anymore.